I grew up in a Christian home to Christian parents, and we grew up right here in this church, Hollywood Community Church, and I remember being a little kid running around the church hallways and going to school here at Hollywood Christian School as well. And so I was raised in a Christian home, a Christian environment with Christian values and traditions, but with me, it never really stuck. It was just beliefs that I had about Jesus Christ, and I knew the facts, and I knew that I believed Jesus was real, but that was basically where my relationship with God ended, is I just knew that He was reality, and that was about it. And my teenage years, and even as a kid, I always struggled with my own self-image and wanting to be just somebody different, not who I was. And so I was never really comfortable with just being me and the way that God made me. And so I began to pursue other things to try to be like other people, to be like the world, to be like somebody that I thought would be significant. And so my teenage years, I ran as far away from God as possible. I wasn't a Christian. I quit going to church when I was 14, got a job and was hanging out with the wrong crowd, trying drugs to see if that was who I was, hanging out with people that were just recently out of jail, thinking, okay, if I had these friends, then that would bring me significance, and I could be somebody other than myself. What really hit home for me is the summer of my junior year, before I was about to start my senior year of high school, my dad passed away. And it was a moment where I began to question God and say, well, God, man, if you really loved me and cared about me, then why would you allow this tragedy to happen? And for me, it turned into anger, and it turned into grief, and it turned me into a person where I said, you know what, God, I'm just going to prove to you that I don't need you in my life. And I began to run even further away from God. And I remember that one of my aunts who lived in North Carolina, she had called my mom, and my mom was praying for me the whole entire time, telling the family members, man, pray for Brad. He's not in a good spot. He's not in a good place. And she just told me, you know what, I'm going to bring you up to North Carolina, fly you out here for a couple weeks. I had a cousin of mine named Matt, and he had just become a Christian for about a year before, and he just always kept harassing me the whole 2 weeks to come and go to his church. And he's like, man, just try it out, just come to my church, just come with me one time. And I kept rejecting it. I didn't want anything to do with God. I was trying to run as far away from God as possible, and God was not a solution for me in that moment. And I kept turning him down, and he kept asking, and I kept turning him down, and he kept asking. And finally, one day he said, man, can you please just come with me to church? And I said, man, if this will make you stop asking, I'll do anything you want. I'll go to church with you. And so I went to church with him that one day, and I remember the next couple of days I was at his house all by myself. No one else was around, and I was just laying on a bed, just kind of thinking, and God got a hold of my heart. And one of the things that he whispered to me just in the middle of the day with nobody else around was, this is not who I made you to be, Brad. And I knew in that moment that I was living a life that God never intended for me to live, that I was trying to find satisfaction in something else besides God. And it was in those moments that I knew that I had finally become the person that God wanted me to be. Not perfect, but knowing that I finally found the image that God wanted me to have, and it was His plan for my life. And I began to pursue my life, living for Him, doing what God had wanted me to do. God gave me a purpose for my life. And He said, look, this is what I want you to do, Brad. I've given you gifts and talents to use for me to help build my kingdom. And as I began to follow Him and give my life to Him and follow Him every day, God began to open up opportunities for me to find out what my life's calling is. And step by step, God led me to this church using the gifts and talents that He had given me the moment that I was born, and that He had planned for me, even before I was even born. And so for me, coming to Christ has given me purpose, it's given me direction, and it's given me a relationship with the Almighty God that will never go away. The main thing that God has taught me through my relationship with Jesus Christ is that God has always challenged me to do this, to live the way God made you. And that's a challenge I have for you. Live the way that God made you. Don't live somebody else's life. Nobody else can live your life except you. And the best way to live it is having a relationship with Jesus Christ. My name is Brad Creviston, and this is my before and after story.